The algorithm clearly knows I saw Heather's in February because it has been blasting Carrie Hope Fletcher singing I Know I Have a Heart on Facebook for ages, and Glasgow, I caved. Glasgow. I bought tickets and entered a loveless contract between me and the Gillian Lynn Theatre between then until curtain down. I love theatre, my degree is in it, and I've seen some amount of crappery in my time, but for some reason, the more time that passed, the more like angry and motivated I got at this production, and also at myself, because it was like, I knew I was sticking my hand in the toaster, but I was like, oh, there's that one song on Facebook that makes me feel warm. Obviously from this point on, there's going to be spoilers for Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella, though how do you spoil what's already gone off? First off, the cast were wonderful, high energy dancers, great singers. Victoria Hamilton Barrett, who played the stepmother, was a scene-stealing parade. She like had this weird like French German Eartha Kitt accent, and like Cinderella, Cinderella. Carrie Hope Fletcher in the Facebook adverts was the reason that we bought this thing, to go see her singing I Know I Have a Heart. So then the scenery revolves round, we get 10 minutes of singing, and then there she is, my boyfriend held my hand like, oh god, here we go, and BAM! Understudy. She's like, I'm not what you expected, I hope you're not disappointed. And I was, like, I'm not gonna lie, I really was. Like, profoundly. Like, I'm not trying to be triggering, but there's like a weird lynching sequence in this play, and my boyfriend was like, oh, maybe they'll like burn her and Carrie will come out, and I was like, no, let it go. We got Georgina, the understudy, who's every bit as talented as Carrie, and I only bring this up so you get an idea of what my experience was like on the night. So god, where do I start? We open in Belleville in this like vulgar version of Who Will Buy from Oliver, with like horny milkmaids and like a baker like shouting, who wants to taste my lovely hot buns? And it's... So it turns out Belleville relies on tourism, and everyone there is a brain dead, solid 10 out of 10, loves cosmetic surgery and body shaming, which already I was like, I'm getting bad vibes. This is gonna be one of these, don't judge a book by its cover, unless the cover's beautiful, then judge away. Bring down the gavel. What do you have against pretty people, Andrew Lloyd Incel? We then meet the Queen of Belleville, who exclaims that the town has won the Best Town Award for 49 years running, and to honour the 50th year they're building a statue of her late son Prince Charming, who is missing in battle. And then they introduce us to Prince Sebastian, who is her very disappointing son, and they really hammer home how disappointing he is. This show is as subtle as a coma. The town suspects that it's that one outcast, that bad Cinderella, who like conveniently returns to the scene of the crime to just do the crime again. And then they like chase her down with pitchforks and torches, and it's kind of like medieval in a town that has like modern cosmetic procedures. I don't know. And then they lose the Best Town prize because of this grungy teenager, and the stakes are set, except they're not, because those aren't actually the stakes, they're just some random subplot that's now done. She then sings like, I am bad Cinderella, and they tie her to a tree, and I thought they were gonna burn her, but then I guess they just leave her to die? Like, I don't know. It's never really mentioned again. Like, she's out and about in the town, and when she escapes, and no one's like, hey, you were sentenced to death. It's just fine. So she gets rescued by Sebastian, and they're like, ah, lynching, right? So the fact that I saw a black actress in this role as well, it added certain like undertones to elements in the plot, but obviously unintentional. But you know, it's colourblind casting. That's a good thing, especially in Andrew Lloyd Webber productions. So it turns out they've grown up together, which I actually liked, because it was like, you know, we're not getting this love at first sight trope. It's a good detoxification of that. And then you realise that he's like, oh love, so happy you like did that and like defaced the statue of my dead brother. Like, she's not that good a friend if you're defacing a grave of your best pal's brother. That's bad taste, Cinderella. They discuss that he's now the heir, and then that her parents are dead, and you think there'd be like maybe some mutual mourning bonding happen. what you into? Oh, mutual mourning. Oh, fuck, yeah. Oh. Sebastian then reveals to us, the audience, that he is secretly in love with her, and you're like, great, the one person in town who is actually nice to her has an agenda. I'm being cynical, whatever. We go home and meet the spoiled, privileged stepsisters, and they have everything, but they want Cinderella's necklace. Now remember the necklace, because it is very important that the play really promises that this necklace is important. The stepmother. This production will work as long as she is in the role of the stepmother. There's not a breath of oxygen in the theatre left behind when she was on stage. She was like pulling laughs out of everything. Even when the writing was sometimes a little cringe or subpar, she managed to sell it. Cinderella has now become a slave in the house that used to be owned by her parents, and she's like, oh, I would run away, but it turns out I'm also in love with Sebastian. And like, I don't know if it's a casting thing, but the impression I get from them, like, even when I look at Carrie, who I never saw, like, they don't read as teenagers, so I don't really get this awkward in love, like, I will die for ya, like, T-I-L-F-F-L-L, I don't know what that means, falafel, always and forever. So the whole, like, I'm going to endure this mindless suffering and torture and maybe potential death threats just for, like, love? Like, I'd really kind of buy into it more if she was, like, some young innocent, but this is bad Cinderella who is, like, out blazing trails, as she's telling us, and, you know, I feel like she would be a tad more worldly. It would all be fine if the play hadn't mentioned leaving Belleville, like, as an option, but, you know, like, why not have her, like, under house arrest or something, or, like, I don't know, love conquers all just seems like a really weak motivation for someone that's in an unrequited love position who's also, like, life is on the line, and, yeah. We then inexplicably cut to a gay sauna, and there's just men in harnesses and leather and working out and singing about how Sebastian's girl must be a cow. Like, when I was watching this, I honestly didn't know who these men were meant to be, and neither does the play. Like, eventually, like, in Act 2, I sussed that these were, like, some sort of palace guards or something, but, you know, like, on the soundtrack, it's literally just called the Hunks song, so these people are known as the Hunks. Then the Queen wanders in like Bette Midler, just checking out the crumpet. Apparently the kingdom is now in disarray because of this ruined statue. It's going to ruin their tourist trade, and it could cause an uprising and beheadings. And then small, feeble, pathetic, disappointing Sebastian has to fill his late brother's shoes and become the heir to the throne. And so they must find him a wife, and then the Queen decides that they're going to throw a royal ball. And then she and the Hunks sing a song about how great Prince Charming was, and, you know, I will say, this musical does have some banging songs in it. This is not one of them. This is like a military march that has a disco dance break, and it sounds better than it is because it's actually horrible. It's never a good thing when you feel embarrassed watching people on stage, and I felt embarrassed. It was that stupid, like, men are being sexy so it's funny sort of vibe, and you know, I just feel like we've moved past that as a society. They'd be doing like these really complicated sequences and then literally so out of character, just playing cheap. It's cheap laughs. You know, it's not the audience's fault for laughing at this when it's framed like that, but, you know, just let men be sexy. Like, why not? Like, and sensual. Like, I'm sorry, I'm too hung up on this. Actually, I'm not, right? Okay. So I come from, like, drag and burlesque where, like, so it's like, it's jarring for me to see, like, where, like, sensuality and, like, fierceness and sexuality in men is, like, a celebrated thing. This is a theme that kind of comes up later as well in a much more exasperating way. I haven't even mentioned the fact that the Queen apparently has this, like, incestuous relationship with her son. It's strange. They also describe him as a very tan man. And so this is Caleb Roberts, who plays Charming, by the way. Like, that's not tan. Like, when I saw it, I thought they sung Fairy Tale Man, but it wasn't. I checked the lyrics and there's, I don't know, like, maybe change it? maybe change it, even for the sake of future proofing. Like maybe you will have a very pale person and playing it next time. Finally, that song ends, and then they do an encore. Sebastian and Cinderella meet again in the woods, and he's angry because she has indirectly set off this marry me off chain of events for him. And then she like goes away, and he starts singing like wistfully about how much he loves her and how he wish he could tell her. And like, the song's nice, but it's just kind of redundant at this point because it's not new information. We already knew that's how he felt about her. We're still in this like stalemate of I've not told you how I feel with each other. And I liked the song when I heard it, but he sings it he sings it a total of 3 times in the show, and it's the exact same thing. Like, it's unacceptable. Like, a reprise needs to be from either a different character's perspective, or it needs to have like some sort of subverted meaning. Like, your plot is not that complicated. Like, we've not forgotten that you're in love with Cinderella. We knew that before we even bought the tickets. The stepmother hears Sebastian singing about this, and so she goes to see the Queen, who is like planning the ball and cutting hospital funding. There's almost like this anti-establishment theme at times, like it's hinted at, but it never really goes anywhere. The stepmother shows up and they sing about how they recognise each other from the old days where they were strippers, gold diggers, circus performers, something vaguely shameful. Like, it's not clear. The stepmother tells the Queen about Cinderella, and she's like, oh, rags to riches stories, stunning. She also somehow doesn't seem to know who Cinderella is prior to this, but yes, she does, because she's just like sentenced her to death, and everyone in the town knows who she is because this happened yesterday. The stepmother instead wants the prince to marry one of her daughters, stepsisters, or she'll tell everyone about the Queen's past. So they make a deal, and I've just written, this was a good scene, and the Queen was also a good actress. It was good to see the two acting together. We're back in the town hall, and Sebastian is very popular now with the ladies, much to his distress. And there's some more like shaming, and all the girls in the town have had nose jobs, and Sebastian is like, oh, swipe left if you wear makeup. I bet he calls women females, do you know that? I bet he's one of those. He pleads for Cinderella to come to the ball with him, like, as a pal, like, help him through this night. And she's gonna go, and then the stepmother's like, listen, maid, he just feels sorry for you. I don't want you to embarrass yourself, Cinderella. You're as dull as a turnip. The stepsisters are getting ready for the ball, and they're mocking Sebastian's appearance and personality, and Cinderella is like, listen, that's not cool. He's a human man-child, and he should be treated as such. And the stepmother is like, nonsense, he's a prince, and a prince will choose beauty if a beauty conquers all. Cinderella is now like, okay, I'm the only person in town that has got as good intentions at heart, so I gotta throw my hat in the ring, I guess. So he's invited me, I'm going to this ball. Now it's like one of the more like baffling parts of this production. Cinderella goes to the dress shop and meets the godmother, who is like this sadistic beauty guru surgeon, and she demands Cinderella's mother's necklace as payment. Very Ursula from Little Mermaid. Remember I told you about the necklace? Yeah, remember the necklace? This is the stethoscope, but remember the necklace? Andrew Lloyd Webber gets to have his big Phantom of the Opera rock musical number where she is like singing like, beauty is pain, you're gonna go under the knife. I was like, who's this late stage villain like entering the fray? So Cinderella gets her makeover. They replace her on the surgery chair with a mask with like a very obvious body double, and she runs off to change in the wings, and like, I don't want to complain about things because sometimes stuff is expensive and out with production capabilities, but like this is an expensive production. I don't know what the budget was, but you can tell. I just feel like they could do a little better than just like pulling a screen in front of her for 5 minutes. Diana the musical, for all that it was, had some amazing quick change moments. Even like Heather's, which seems to have like appears to have the budget of like a high school production, has a better costume reveal in it than this does. If you went to see a pantomime version of Cinderella in the pavilion, it would have a spinning dress quick change moment, and you know, for the Act 1 finale it was just a bit meh. Anyway, Cinderella's like, oh my god, I look so much better, why did I resist this? And the godmother's like, here, try the shoes, they're made of knives. She's like, I've stapled the dress to your skin cause beauty has a price. It's weird. And the twist of this production is meant to be that like her shoes and her corset are going to be so uncomfortable that she won't like lasts till midnight, so it's like you better be home by midnight, because like there's no magical reason for it. It's just guessing that's about the approximate time her feet are going to be killing her, and I don't know, I just feel you're just kind of trying to force tension at this point. Like, it was stupid. You don't know her pain threshold. Like, she laughed when she was tied to a tree. Like, I'm sure she could wear some heels, but what ifs? Then we go on with Act 2, and that started with the ball sequence, and now, while the dancers come out and are waltzing, the entire front section of the audience and the stage rotated round, and I will admit, that was pretty magic. So then the whole ball sequence is now staged in the round, which is a minor gripe, but I found it a little odd seeing characters like the Queen and the stepmother suddenly in this format, where until then they've been very front-on, performative, like Shakespearean, and suddenly seeing them like doing little like improv-y aside bits when they're close to the and mingling with the audience. I don't know, it just a little jarring, but minor note. The prince is forced to dance with a bunch of girls who he is dismissing as shallow bimbos, because of course he does. Because remember, if you're beautiful and care about your appearance, you're a narcissist. No nuance. How dare they? So now Cinderella shows up at the ball and no one recognises her. And so the transformation wig they gave her was black. And while I appreciate they've obviously made that for her because Carrie's is blonde, she just really doesn't look any different. From the promo images of Carrie, she appears to have had a complete like makeup change, but Georgina, she was like wearing her ball makeup the entire production. Like she had an electric blue eye and like sparkly red lips. It was like kind of jarring, and then when I see what Carrie's meant to be, kind of this like gothy type, and you know, obviously I understand the different skin tones, but I don't know, it just felt like more of a stretch, and there's no reason like a black actress can't have a blonde wig, you know, especially in this like hyper stylized town that they're all living in. Also want to mention that her gown is like the least nice one at the ball. Like there's a kind of Halloween-y costume vibe to it, and I'm critiquing like creative decisions here, not the actress's appearance. She's beautiful, like let's make that clear. I thought if that was a conscious decision, then have the other characters address that she doesn't look the same, but they didn't. They were all like, oh my god, she's stunning. So now we have to do the whole like suspension of disbelief where we all pretend that no one on stage can recognise her, even though she's now, due to the stage spinning, is now even closer to the audience than she's ever been before, and it's like, ugh, whatever. And then she's dancing with Sebastian, and they're like face to face, and he has to like awkwardly do this, oh, I'm not really looking at you type of thing to kind of help with it. So he's rude to her because he doesn't realise it's Cinderella, and she's like, what the fuck? And he's like, I'm waiting for someone else. And it's annoying. Like, these two people talking about different things, shit, but they're talking about the same thing. Blech. Maybe you should learn how to communicate before you plan on getting married. Like, I'm just saying. So, the stepmother clocks that Cinderella does not know how to walk a ball and realises that she's bad in her heels and is like, oh, there's only one woman on the earth who does not know how to walk on a heel, and it's you, Cinderella. So she like reveals what's been obvious to everyone except the characters, and she makes Adele, her stepsister, kiss Sebastian, and at the stroke of midnight, and then Cinderella on cue, her shoes are hurting and she's like flings them off, and then her dress, and she starts tearing it, and then Sebastian realises it's Cinderella and she's like, nah, piss off, and then we go into the algorithm song. I won't lie, this song is really good, and like I did get goosebumps at the first chorus, and then I didn't, and then it stopped, and I realised that I was like, oh, I'm getting these because I know the song, but now knowing the context that it's in within the play, I'm just like, it had a bigger impact on me before I saw the production, because now seeing that the stakes are just based on like a kind of misunderstanding, like they just don't feel high enough to warrant this sort of emotion, and the emotion it's trying to project just isn't as nice. And you know, and it's a shame because like just see when she's like spinning around the stage and all the lights all around the theatre are on, like these are moments that could be really magic, and I think that's why I am like making this video, because I feel like there is really good potential in this show and there are great moments, and it's just I wish there was actually a plot where he had broken her heart like in a real way for this song to have been put out for us. And then we have a song called Act 2 Scene 2, which aptly titled because it is the we've got to spin the stage back around song. The hunks all come in and start singing about how they've all shagged Sebastian's future fiancée, who is now Adele, the stepsister, and like the show has I want to make a point, the show has a lot of like profanity and like sexual, it's not sexual innuendo, it's just sexual content. Like I feel like doing this is not innuendo, it's just, you're just doing that. Like in the first minute of the show, there's like the B words dropped. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it felt like I'm trying to be a bit down with the kids and edgy. Speaking of down with the kids, there were literally 7-year-olds in the audience. There was like literally a little girl dressed in her like Disney store Cinderella costume. The website says that this is a production suitable for children aged 6+. I'm like, yeah, 6 plus 10. None of the promotional material kind of gives any other vibe than that this is just like some Disney on Ice type of shit. Sebastian fights with his mum over what's transpired, and like, honestly, I kind of semi-tuned it out because at this point it was just like another interaction that we've seen 100 times in the play already, and he's like, oh, you've won, you broke me, the royal family is a sham, but I'll go along with it. Are you happy, mother? And she's like, yes! And then he's all, well, I'm not me anymore, and I'm like, oh, thank God, you're kind of whiny. So back home, the stepmother is like thrilled because all her scheming is paid off, and Marie is sobbing because she wasn't picked, which is like odd considering that she didn't want him anyway, and the mum is like, tough shit, I hate you. They prep for the wedding, and then the stepmother and Cinders have like this kind of honest conversation about like viewing each other as like rivals, but somehow finding some kind of respect. And Cinderella is like, you're gonna be like the queen mother, I'm gonna make things really uncomfortable for you unless you pay me to leave. And then the stepmother's like, you've got balls, Cinderella. So Cinders is like, right, I'm away. And then Marie is like, why are you letting mum win? I hate her too. And then Cinderella says to her, you don't support other women.
And you don't support other women.
But, I mean, she doesn't, but I wish she did. So they're like, let's hatch a plan. I'll go in the carriage, I'll go, and like, we can stop mum together. I'll go to the wedding, you just have to run and get there by foot. Then this plan of... So Marie does a slut drop on the aisle, just goes, and then her mum's like, get over here, and that's it. I'm like, girls teaming up with girls, getting shit done. Like, I don't even get it. What's the point in introducing this plot point to have it amount to nothing, no consequence, literally seconds later? Like, don't even bother. So the wedding is all joyful, dramatic, and we're waiting for the objections, and none. Where's Cinderella? Then just at the last minute, Prince Charming shows up, back from the dead, like, non-consensually tongues Adele and calls her a wench. He's like, I'm here to save my brother Sebastian from unhappiness, but it's like, you've been missing. How do you know of his unhappiness? You've just gate-crashed his wedding. Everything, dear God, it just descends into lunacy at this point. The Queen is like, oh no, and then he's like, oh, don't worry, Mum, I found my one true love, there will be a wedding. And, oh God, I felt it coming, and I like winced, and then Prince Charming is like, guess what? I am a man's man. Up pops up his like male fiancé, and it was so gay, it was homophobic. Like, he like spinned him around and kissed him on stage, and the audience all laughed, and because it was ludicrous. Like, both Heathers and Legally Blonde have these kind of character outs themselves numbers, and I don't know, for whatever reason they didn't make me uncomfortable the way that this did. It just feels so late in the day in the human race to have, guess what? I'm gay, as like a punchline, you know? Then they start singing about marry for love, and then they go through like another whole wedding with like Prince Charming, and the only honest line about this comes from the Queen, who's like, love is love, throw that on the tea towels. And it's like, yes, so you admit it's rainbow capitalism, yeah? But Prince Charming's fiancé, or now husband, never speaks, by the way, doesn't say a single line in the whole thing, and it's just... The show is patting itself on the back so hard for like this progressive moment, despite the fact that we've just used being gay as a punchline. And, you know, I kind of looked around the theatre because I was like, oh my God, this is one of these moments that is going to like validate homophobes and be like, oh, gays shouldn't be married, it's a sham. And I'm like, I agree, this is a sham, like, this is stupid. This is the climax of the show at this point, and like, where's Cinderella? Like, she's not there. She's not in her own production. So she arrives outside the church just in time to hear the wedding bells and assumes she's too late. Like, what took her so long? Like, was she walking backwards? She's like, screw this, I'm leaving Belleville, goodbye! And then I couldn't believe that it then cuts to the reception of the wedding, and the gay nonsense continues. Suddenly at 10:30 at night we are introducing Latin salsa to the score, and we're just dancing away what shreds of tension might have been left in this play. The stepmother's raging that her plan has failed, and she confronts the queen, and the queen's like, I'm going to execute you if you don't leave this party. And she's like, remember, I know all your dirty secrets. And the queen's like, I don't care, whee! Marie tells Sebastian that Cinderella was on her way to get to him, and he's like, oh no, I've got to go get her. And then, so he goes to leave, and the queen's like, wait, you're not leaving this party? And he's like, yes, I am. And she's like, no, you're going to stay here and dance. She's like, no, I'm not. And then she goes, yes, you are. And then he goes, fine, I'll dance. Boom, boom, doo, doo, doo. And like, my jaw unhinged. I was like, that just starts hip hop, popping and locking, cartwheel stamp. I'm now like registering, was this a TikTok dance? Oh god, I think it might have been. And then he has a dance off with his brother, and it's just nuts, bolts, screws, loose, and the brother's like, bitch, this is my party. On his way out, he sees the godmother, and she's like, who are you? And because she has Cinderella's necklace, I really remember the necklace. And she's like, oh, here, take it. And then makes some like quip about him being judgy or shallow or something, and then walks off. And like what on earth, like what was the point of any of it? Like, who's that woman? Like, what were her motivations? Why did she make makeup seem like Cinderella was signing a deal with Faustus? So she is like setting the beauty standards because she's done everyone else's makeup and plastic surgery, and now she's like judging, and do you know what, I can't even be bothered, because it doesn't even, the incompatibility, it just, So he goes back to the cottage, and Cinderella's left the slipper, the one that she didn't throw at him, and then he starts singing to the shoe, the same bloody song. And then thankfully Cinderella comes in and interrupts him because she's come back to take the shoe to like a pawn shop. He tells her, oh no, I didn't go through with the wedding. And she's like, oh cool, do you want to go like live together, but you've got to get a job and all this? And he's like, yeah, cool. And then they kiss, and then he's like, oh, guess what, your mum's necklace. And then she's like, oh, thanks. And then they kiss again, and that's it. Why the necklace? Like, why? So then it's the vows, and a member of the chorus came out and like started like pointing and making the audience all get up out of their seats, and I was like, oh, it's a bit presumptuous. Maybe like this production has not been getting standing ovations, which in like the West End of London is like a big deal. Like most shows will get a standing ovation on most performances. Ugh, the end. Like, in case you haven't noticed, I am down for being silly. I'm down for convoluted plots. I'm down for fluff, you know. This is clearly not Arthur Miller we're doing here. But, like, thematically, the show just doesn't know where it's going. There's, like, this kind of vague idea of, like, beauty standards being pushed around, and Cinderella and Sebastian are mocked by everyone for their appearances, but, like, maybe it's through self-defense or suspicion, but they just do the same to everyone else. Out with them being like the protagonists and outcasts, there's no real like moral high ground they hold over the other characters. We're like invited to laugh at like the hunks and the nose jobbies as like this monolith of this image obsessed society. The godmother brings in this like theme of beauty is pain and it's sacrifice and it's misery, but nobody except Cinderella seems to suffer as a result of this. Their vapidness goes completely unchallenged. There's no comeuppance for any of the beautiful assholes. In fact, almost everybody finishes the play up having a wonderful time at the party. Nobody learns that being mean is bad. They don't come to respect Cinderella or Sebastian. Like, the happy ending is Cinderella and Sebastian being ostracized from society and having to like move away. And it's not like a sad, wicked, we can never return to Oz sort of way. Like they're like, yay, like it's romanticized. This is kind of teasing what I want to talk about next, because like none of the characters in this play have an arc. The queen is like this shady ruler who like doesn't like women, cuts funding, is trying to paint a pretty picture of a town that is like whiskers away from poverty, like allegedly, because I don't know where any of these poor citizens are. And in the first scene, the baker is like, no one goes hungry in Belleville, and just like throws out free bread to people. All her plans come to fruition, and even when they don't, she still comes out on top. She's like a successful Marie Antoinette. Like, we're living in this age where there's like politicians and celebrities and rulers are being like demasked and exposed for their crimes, and you know, It just seems a little sus, babe, that she's like left smiling and laughing at the end because she's like virtue signaling in this gay wedding and getting away with it, but like love is love. And when I say these things, like the text is not saying these things, this is the reality of like what they've presented on stage. Prince Charming only has like a short stage time, but he's still just like as shitty as everyone else, but he's like revered as this icon, and there's never any mention of like, you pressured me, mum, you spread like misinformation about my sexual escapades, and I had to live in the closet, and I struggled, and I ran away because of you, and you betrothed me, and like, honestly, like, that would have been a good moment, because then the Queen gets demasked, and then Belleville has a new king, but instead we just get like, oh, this is my party, bitch, and it's not even like clear why he's returned. Like, it says it's to save his brother, but he also doesn't like his brother. I don't know. Adele is spoiled, she stays spoiled, and even when she lands the prince, suddenly she wants the baker, and then she gets the baker, and that's kind of it. Marie is like, almost there in this like tiny moment where she agrees to team up with Cinderella, but then it's just like a transactional scheme that ends up going nowhere. Even when she tells Sebastian about Cinderella coming, it's like rude and nonchalant. It's like, it's inconsequential to her. She's just like, her helping comes across that she's just like bored. The godmother, I have no idea whose side she's meant to be on, whether she was good, what her motivations were meant to be, very unclear. I thought she was going to be a villain at one point, and then she's just never in it again. God knows. Then the stepmother schemes and manipulates the events of the play, and ultimately she's the one that's driving everything forward, and despite all her evil, the only comeuppance she gets is being like asked to leave a party. Like, I'm sure she'll survive. And this is another big issue because neither Sebastian nor Cinderella have any agency in this play. Outside of the initial statue defacing, they are moved along by circumstance, and even their interactions are predetermined by the scheming of other characters, so like they're never even in a position to speak honestly with each other. Like, this is supposed to be bad Cinderella, but she doesn't actually do anything. Like, even when she attempts to do something, it backfires on her because the game's been rigged against her by other characters. She also sings about how she has her own style, but she just wears like the rags that she's being forced to serve in. She talks about like blazing trails and like kicking ass, but like what are you even planning on doing once you leave Belleville? Like, she doesn't have any interests or goals. Like, it's not even girl bossing, you know, like it's a bad day when I would have liked just a touch of girl bossing in the show, but no, she's not feminist. She's not badass. She hates all women. They all hate her, and they all hate each other as well. And Sebastian is the same. He is trapped by the confines of royal requirement, and he sings about 800 times about how only you can rescue lonely me. But Cinderella never actually does rescue him. He gets out on a technicality, and even at the last hour, he's at the party and he doesn't even manage to successfully stand up to his mum, like, which has been his central conflict throughout the entirety of the play, and she's like, no, you're gonna stay and dance, and he obliges. Plot holes aside, and like, as an aside, how can you have so many bloody plot holes that Cinderella can be summed up in 5 sentences? It doesn't commit properly to any idea, message, or theme. Like, you don't feel catharsis from watching it. You feel like you need to go backstage and intervene, and Andrew Lloyd Webber's done that already via remotely screaming at his cast from phone call, but we're not here to talk about that. The best part of the show, however, is linked to a lot of its structural problems because the songs are mostly amazing, and like I didn't look at the soundtrack until about 5 days later, and I still remembered what most of them sounded like. They like interrupt the pacing of something awful. There is a million ballads of one person standing on the stage singing their heart out. Act 2 really felt like it was filling time with some of them. After seeing the show, I read the review by the New York Times that said that they really needed to cut 20 minutes, and I was like, yes, I agree, 20 minutes should be cut. And then I realised by the time I saw the production that they already had. The truth is, the songs and talents of the cast are so good in this show, and there is a good show in there somewhere. It just needs to be rescued with some big changes. But luckily, you've got a nurse on standby. I'll send my dramaturg invoice in shortly. These changes that I would make are not going to solve every problem the play has, but they're going to make an improvement as far in my mind. So I would have Cinderella's makeover leaving her in so much pain that instead of her coming out like, oh look, I look stunning, she comes out like upset and stressed, and beauty actually has a price. Lean into it. Have her get to the ball in Act 2 wound up and angry so that when Sebastian sees her, he's like, oh my god, you're stunning, and she's like, oh, you like me like this? You like me like this? You like me like this? And they have a fight because she's like, oh, now he likes me, and he's like, God, she's become just as jaded and rude as the rest of the town. So that the Queen can comfort him and be like, oh, I'm sorry, son, I tried to warn you. Honestly, marry Adele, she's lovely. And then he's like, oh God, I guess. And then upon kissing her, he feels like disgusted and goes back to Cinderella, but it's too late because Cinderella is now heartbroken, and that would give I Know I Have a Heart a lot more weight to it because she's actually been like screwed over, like she's actually had her heart broken. After the ball, I'd have a section where the godmother comes in and she's witnessed the mess of what's happened, and she feels guilty because she didn't grant Cinderella her dreams like she said she would, and in fact contributed to them breaking. This doesn't even need dialogue or a song, it can just be like communicated with like looks and some background music, maybe a little instrumental reprise of Beauty Has a Price, and she's like, oh damn shit. It would also be a good opportunity to turn the stage back around without it being just randomly happening at another point. I changed the staging of some of the ballads, like Far Too Late, Cinderella could sing it in one part of the stage while Sebastian is getting like measured up for his suit and getting prepped for the wedding. I think that would help a little when some of these songs come in and just slow everything down, like the action stopped because Cinderella has 4 verses of this sad song to sing. The next change I would have is Marie. So instead of her like mutually just hating her sister, she could look up to her, and then when she's disregarded, she has this realization that Adele and her mother have no empathy, but that Cinderella does. Have the moment of them teaming up to be like a reconciliation and a redemption. And then the wedding march music is also just too joyful given the central character's anguish and urgency at this point. You can either play the sequence as like a nightmare for Sebastian, or like as I would prefer, give it Marie this would be a great opportunity for Marie to come in and have like this wedding crasher solo number. Maybe she sabotages the priest, maybe she like spray paints a penis on the gown, like a throwback to Cinderella doing to the statue. Maybe she gives her sister the slippers that are painful to walk in. It could even just be like a reprise of Bad Cinderella, you know, call me Bad Marie. Like, I don't know, like there's scope there, you know, and you can get another silly number out of it because I know this musical loves them. So she gets reprimanded, but she's bought enough time for Cinderella to get to the wedding on foot, where she is now there and she has to face her own ego and be upfront about her emotions in front of everyone and to Sebastian. The Queen's having none of it, and then Sebastian then has to confront her and be firm in his leaving of the royal family, meaning that both the heroes actually do something heroic and conquer the challenges that have been placed in their paths. So the stepmother is furious that the wedding has been called off and is like trying to blame the Queen, and the Queen's fobbing her off because suddenly the townsfolk are grumbling and they're like, oh, Belleville's gone to shit and we don't have any money and blah blah blah. And then like, if you want, at that stage, you can bring in Prince Charming and have your big stupid gay wedding. As I mentioned before, he calls his mother oppressive and homophobic, the demasking is mortifying for her, the stepmother gloats, says the Queen is loud, publicly shamed, and then the Queen's like, oh, you're no better than me, you old whore. She's like, well, you're the one who let the whole polo team suck on your toes. You're the one who used to sing, spread your tot, here I come. The two hurl insults at each other, they can finally reveal what this weird past actually was. It can end in like a cat fight, they're rolling in the aisles, Prince Charming can go, I love me some love, but what I love me more of is drama. See, you get women hating women, and you also get stereotypical homos. More of what you love. But this way, the characters would at least all have completed arcs. And then, I'm sorry, but you absolutely have to cut the wedding party scene. It's atrocious. And then you can have your final scene of Cinderella and Sebastian running out the church, running up together, kissing, and then planning their new life together, blah blah blah. And you can mix that with, you've got a rotating stage, use it, them in the center, stage rotates, and you can have like this mini like montage of like the queen and the stepmother like sitting in a holding cell for disorderly conduct. Adele meets the baker who tells her, oh, I'm penniless by the way, and she's like, huh, oh well, you're hot though. Marie is now like in a more casual look with like her flats on, maybe she's wearing something of Cinderella's, and some of the girls are mocking her and she's like, oh, laugh all you want, but you have no idea how comfortable this is. And then they're like, oh, that sounds rather nice. Wait, where did you get those loafers? Charming and his groom go, marry for love, stick that on the tea towels, because I do like that line. And then the godmother emerges with the necklace and returns it to Cinderella and says, I took this as payment for making your dreams come true, but I never held up my end of the bargain. You made your own dreams come true. And then she refunds her the necklace. Cinderella and Sebastian sing like a joyful, full orchestra version of one of their million ballads together. I don't know. If I could, I would explain all the ways I love, embrace all of your traits. Glad it's not too late. I don't know. It's lyrics by numbers at this point. And then curtain down. Like that came to me without too much strenuous thought. It's the way I thought the play was going anyway. Like, we don't need to see Cinderella sad again. You can cut Cinderella's soliloquy, have her at the wedding, have her doing things, have Sebastian actually stand up to his mum, have that arc finish, have the characters that have been evil get their comeuppance, have some of them learn something, do something a little different. Adele is no longer concerned with social climbing, Marie is now not so image obsessed, you know. Would that help with everything? No, but I think it would help with the pacing and the characters and some of the more clinically unhinged things that they have going on. Since I sat down and wrote all my thoughts about this, Cinderella has now been cancelled at the Gillian Lynn Theatre. So who knows what the future of the show actually will be. Apparently it is still set to open on Broadway. The cast all got to find out about this via social media, very profesh, so I don't know if Andrew Lloyd Webber's in a place where he's gonna go back and make the changes, because he does seem to like to scapegoat things on people that when the faults really do lie with him. I wasn't there making this musical, but it kind of reeks to me of Andrew Lloyd Webber went and wrote a million songs for it, and then they kind of had to force them into the plot because they didn't want to cut things like Far Too Late, or they wanted to put I Know I Have a Heart in, and they wanted this other song and this other song. They all seem to have been written and had the play worked around them because none of them actively pushed the plot in any way. I feel like the correct way to do it would be to have your play and your storyline and go, right, how do we get this character from here to here? Well, why don't we have a song that pushes them that way? But that's not the way Cinderella works. In spite of all this, the show is enjoyable. It was some good escapism, it has good comedic moments. If you want to sit and be brain dead for an hour or two, go for it. The cast are superb. The issues I have are with the source material. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this sort of content and you'd like to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. Though I'm not gonna lie, my ADHD is like very active right now. I am not gonna make promises I can't keep. I don't even know why I made this video. Like, my regular content is not like this. Bye! Go to your room, sit down and be quiet.